Have you ever wanted to set out on adventure, just to get jumped by a couple of rats in the very first dungeon, and suffer permanent hearing damage from the loud screeching noises, forcing you to come crawling back to your elderly father, pleading for the very apprenticeship you before turned down, thereby forever turning yourself into the laughingstock of the village, and leaving you without any pussy, because, in addition, your tail is just a bit smaller than average. Today I'm going to review Bethesda's newest addition to the Elder Scrolls series, the Elder Scrolls Arena. There actually are two versions of the Elder Scrolls Arena, a DOS version and a CD version that is superior in every way. For my first playthrough I had to play the DOS version because Bethesda, still largely focusing on DOS-based games until recently, only hosted the DOS version on Steam, and the download links to the CD version of the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages were all dead, presumably because the guys formerly providing those download links were caught using the wrong kinds of Daggerfall mods. The DOS version didn't even include voice acting, so to preserve my immersion, I had to add my own voice acting.
Come out of the closet now. We all know you're not fooling anyone. Do you really think that people believe that you're straight?
Now, however, you can at last download the CD version on Steam. But if you think that Bethesda finally made a true effort to increase the playability of this age-old game,
you are dead wrong.
They still don't include the manual on Steam. Now, how big of a Hundsfötterich do you have to be to need a manual, you're going to ask? Well, I did need it, because I didn't know the spell point cost of Wizard's Log off the top of my head, and you have to answer this question to be allowed to leave the first dungeon. And even though this copy protection has been removed from the CD version, I dare you to figure out even the most basic things with that guide.
Let's say, hypothetically, you have found a piece of armor, so you put it on, but then your armor rating falls from 9 to 0.
What's going on here? Well, for some reason your armor stat starts at around +10 when you are unarmored. Then, as you go up, it will fall. The better the armor, the lower the number. I like how even back then they knew that this was very confusing, and addressed this multiple times in the manual. Then why make it like this, Julian?
I'm an artist. I'm a performance artist. I'm hired for people to fulfill their fantasy, their deep, dark fantasies.
Let's take a look at character creation now. There are two ways to create a new character. You can either answer a couple of questions and get assigned the worst possible class, or alternatively, you can just choose one directly. Which class you choose determines what kind of armor and weapons you're allowed to use and how many hit points you gain per level. But most notably, every class has a unique perk that may vary in usefulness. These perks make a huge difference as they introduce or completely eliminate certain game mechanics. My first character was a knight who could repair his equipment on his own, completely removing the need to sell a kidney later on just to be able to afford an artifact repair. Because I picked a warrior class, however, I was not able to use any magic besides magical items. Next I played a sorcerer, a powerful wizard who could not generate spell points by himself and instead had to absorb spells. Do you see it? Take into account that it's Bethesda. Yes, you can in fact absorb your own AoE spells. I don't actually know how useful this is, and I'm not willing to double my playtime just to find out. Besides warrior and wizard, there also are thief classes. Thieves generally can do everything warriors and wizards can, but far worse. But if you want to steal from the working class, you might want to give them a go. After you've picked a class, you have to pick your race. I advise you to pick Agonians, because they can swim 50% faster in lava, easily making them the most OP choice. Now that you have created a character, you can dive into the story. The evil wizard Zack has trapped Julian Lefay inside the metaverse in order to prevent him from finishing Daggerfall 2. But he made one mistake. He forgot about you inside his rape dungeon, where you get woken up by the ghost of the former apprentice of Zack and now ex-Imperial Battle Mage, who sends you on a quest for the 8 pieces of the Chaos Staff, which is the only artifact in Tamriel powerful enough to shut down the metaverse servers for good. Whilst searching the staff pieces, you get mocked by Zack every step of the way.
Resist, and I shall see you in such suffering that you will grovel for the sweet release of death.
Story-wise, that's about it. At its core, the Elder Scrolls Arena is a dungeon crawler, so you will spend the most time inside some moist, dark hole nobody has been in for hundreds of years. The dungeons themselves are a really mixed bag. Those you encounter during the main quest are about as good as it gets with games this old. They have great little features, like these riddles you have to answer to open certain doors. Although I wasn't able to solve any of them by myself besides the one from The Hobbit, because
I'm not a smart man.
The randomized dungeons which you encounter during Radiant quests, however, all look the same and have nothing interesting whatsoever about them. Oh, and of course, in some dungeons you have to collect keys to progress further. Do you see the key in this picture? How about now? Yes, in one dungeon later in the game you have to collect 6 keys. Have fun with that. For enemies you have your basic fantasy creatures. They are goblins, minotaurs, women, unpronounceable name,
a black person dressed up as a hot dog,
liches, and many more. Every one of those is inevitably going to ambush you while you are resting, making your experience playing the game very miserable by inhibiting you from ever regenerating any amount of health, and most of the time killing you. As this is a boomer RPG, the beginning of the game is its hardest part. Just watch my second character try to clear the second dungeon. It doesn't get much better later on. There are these ghost thingies whose name I can't pronounce, who can one-shot you at any point of the game because they use their spells completely randomly. Sometimes when you run at them they will cast no spell. Another time they will cast 4 fireballs at once, instantly killing you. Later on the enemies also will get really spongy. Just watch my fully leveled knight fight this lich. Well, that was pretty bad, but surely they don't show up en masse. Wrong, there are about 20 of these guys in the final area. After each successful dungeon crawl you will restock your supplies and gather new quests in one of the many cities. Here you will spend most of the time asking complete strangers for the way. Alternatively, you can just ask the same person for rumors 50 times, until he finally gives you the quest for the artifact you want. Artifacts in this game are completely OP. Some will instantly max out one of your attributes, others will give you 100% lifesteal on all of your attacks, and one even eliminates the need to search for keys. Naturally, the game only allows you to have one of these at a time. Naturally, we don't care. We simply use the artifact once and then bring it to the local blacksmith, which will remove the artifact from our inventory until we go get it back. While it isn't in our inventory, we can simply get new artifact quests until we become an absolute raid boss. This game is in fact very abusable. The overworld outside of cities serves no practical meaning, and besides some small regional differences looks equally boring everywhere. Hell, it doesn't even have mountains with fully self-contained ecosystems. Meh. Overall, the Elder Scrolls Arena is a pretty mediocre game. The dungeon crawling doesn't really feel that rewarding, as you will never find good gear apart from some magical items. The good gear is instead only found at predetermined shops and through artifact quests, making it so that you always have to decide whether you want to progress the story or grow in strength. You also can't carry all the loot you find in dungeons, as your inventory slots even apart from carry weight are very restricted. This might actually be a good thing though, as this inventory management is absolutely atrocious. And selling items is a pain in the ass as well. Everything that sucks in this game is done infinitely better in Daggerfall. It really doesn't make you a bigger The Elder Scrolls fan if you know that Dagoth Ur originally was the name of a dungeon in Arena. Just post a screenshot of all The Elder Scrolls games in your Steam library and be content with that. I rate The Elder Scrolls Arena the frames per second I get running it on high detail out of the amount of times I get ambushed until I'm finally full health again.
You amaze me with your tenacity. I congratulate you on your success. Have you discovered, however, what I have known all along? The staff is drained.